As trauma centers in general started sprouting up around the country in the early 1970s, it became recognized probably within the first decade of their existence that pediatric trauma was different. Then I think people stepped back and started to realize that probably 90% of the injuries that we saw in these pediatric trauma centers was preventable. Are we going to satisfy ourselves with building up beautiful facilities to take care of kids that are getting injured, knowing that most of them shouldn't be here to begin with?
I have been a pediatric emergency physician for pretty much my entire career. Pediatricians and emergency physicians and trauma surgeons who take care of kids realize that a lot of the work we do is patching kids together after they've had a completely preventable event.
We've been able to build up our set of curricula to cover really most of the major injury events that kids might be exposed to from ages 0 to 17 now.
Every 2 weeks we have a child passenger safety check where people can come and either have their car seat that they have already, make sure that it's installed properly, or we also are able through different grants to supply car seats to people who don't have them or can't afford them. We have Goods for Guns where people have the opportunity to turn their guns in. It's an anonymous turn in your gun. We give bike helmets away, we fit them on the kids, and hopefully they wear them.
Overall, the Mobile Safety Street program is a real labor of love that I think in the long run has the biggest bang for the buck.
I actually had one student, and this happened last fall. He attended a school, one school in the fall, and we went with Mobile Safety Street, and he came through the program. And then later that year, we went to a different school to run the program again as scheduled, and he had switched schools. And so I was going through Mobile Safety Street for the second time. It was great. We actually got to see our teaching in practice. He was able to perfectly execute everything on Mobile Safety Street, and he remembered from several months earlier.
The program that I've been the most heavily involved in, and I think that means the most to me because of the exposure that I get to these types of patients in the emergency department, is the teen driving program. There's an enormous number of teens that we take care of here that are very badly injured in motor vehicle crashes. And we don't call them accidents because they're not accidents. They're preventable events, they're crashes.
The students are given an opportunity to come in and drive the simulator and experience what it would feel like to drive under the influence of alcohol or drugs, and also distracted driving using a cell phone. They're definitely cocky, and they're not quite as cocky after they see what some of the consequences are. I think it puts it into perspective for them that it follows them around for a long time and it's not just an accident.
One of the things we've tried to teach medical students through our injury prevention program, that medicine is a piece of a big public health continuum, and what happens in a hospital is really just a very small piece of it.
My hope is that the message that Dr. Hirsch and Dr. Mano are trying to get out there can spread. We can teach people to do very basic things, like Allison was saying, how to cross the street, or how to take that extra second to think about those things, and it can make a big difference in their lives and in our lives as physicians. We can kind of cut our business, which I think is a great model to have.
When you think about it, everything we do is trying to change the behaviors, trying to change the attitudes, and I think it makes a really big difference.
I work with heroes every day. Dr. Hirsch and Dr. Mano, they don't do this as part of their job. It's above and beyond. It's something they do because they believe in it.
It's impossible to, turn down the opportunity to be involved in projects that I really do believe will make a difference in the lives of kids, and will mean that I'm seeing fewer patients here.
I was born and raised in Liberia. When the Civil War broke out, I went close to death on many occasions, even to the extent where I dug my own grave. So while I was digging close to knee level in a hole, this guy ran there and yelled my name. And then he said, well, I will take care of this guy myself. You tie him and put him in the back of my pickup. Asked me whether I knew him. I said, no. And when the guy said, I almost dropped out of school and you took me in your village and asked your parents to pick their fruits, their oranges, their bananas and things, and we went and sold it. When we came back to the village, your parents allowed me to take the money, and that's how I completed school. Since then, we have not met. And when I heard your name, it rung a bell in my ear. That's why I decided to come and at least pay you back. But get out of this country. What we're doing is not a play. I found my way through the bushes for 6 months to the borders of Liberia and Ivory Coast and across. I spent a little over 10 years in refugee camp. And then through God's grace, I got reset up here in the United States through the Lutheran Refugee Resettlement Program. So coming into the church where I was the only person of color, when I came in, the reception that I got, it was very warm. Everybody just took on to us, loved us, welcomed us, and so I felt comfortable.
When Joseph came here, he was the first Liberian in our congregation. Our congregation is now well over 50% Liberian. He is sort of the organizing force in the Liberian community.
So when I look at all of these things, I say, well, the material things, the wealth is all nothing but vanity. And I just decided to help those behind me instead of keeping everything to myself here and die tomorrow and thousands of people still suffering.
He told me that when he had been in the refugee camp, people there didn't have any shoes. And he was here and doing well here, and he wanted to help them out. So we started collecting used sneakers.
Joseph came to our offices in Holbrook. My wife and I owned a shipping company. He had told us about the history of the 15-year Civil War, told us about the refugee camps and the conditions in Liberia. And at that point, my wife and I decided to help him as much as we could. And we told him to go back to Worcester and collect as much things as he could, and that we'd send a 40-foot container to Liberia. And we also told him that we'd pay for him to go over to meet the container so that he could make sure he distributed the goods to the people that needed it the most.
At the Ministry of Health and Social Welfare, I went there and asked them to please give me a list of all the orphanage homes they have around. And they brought them to me, and I asked them to please highlight those that had no help at all.
Joseph came back with pictures and video from all the orphanages he visited and the people that he helped. It was at that point that we decided that we had to do more. We decided to form Mission to Liberia, and we basically grew from there. We have a feeding program in Liberia. We have built an outreach center to teach health education. We also plan to open a school in Bentown. It's never had a school ever. My thought was, of course, why don't we start a library? You know, the kids can change books. And Joseph sort of laughed and said, these children have never had books in their lives. Once they take a book out of the library, you're never going to see it again. And so we scrapped the library idea, and we just passed out books to the kids. He's been an inspiration. You know, he's changed my life, and I'm very thankful for that. You know, I've told him in the past, when we get off the plane in Liberia, it's like, you know, coming alive.
You know, most of us from Africa, when we come over here, we come with the intention to look for money and get rich. We forget about relatives and friends all back home. But when you get in contact with somebody and ask that person for help, to help your people, you know, it means a whole lot. To me, they are my hero because they did not know me from anywhere. I just simply appealed to them to help my people, that my people were suffering, and they believed me. They trusted me. And everything that is happening, I gave them the credit for it.
What respect I have and regard for him. He's an extraordinary person. I've said this a million times, but it bears repeating. There are not many people around like Joseph, and this world would be so much better off if there were more.